Well, first of all, good afternoon. I'm Kerry Benninghoff. I appreciate you being here. If you can hear me and you choose to speak later, you need to speak as loud as I am currently because our microphones are not functioning. They're hooked into our broadband. Haha. Got to start off with a laugh. Technology is wonderful when it works, and that's partly what we're here to talk about. I do appreciate everyone taking time to join us this afternoon. Before I start, I'm going to introduce Representative, I almost said Lynn Herman, wow. Rich Irvin and Adam Harris. To my left and right, this is actually Adam's legislative district.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. This is an excellent participation. I was kind of curious on a beautiful afternoon how many people we would get, but this was fantastic, and I think it speaks to how important this issue is. So we're very interested to hear what you have to say. Obviously, to some degree, we can control some purse strings and hopefully get the funding needed to make sure that everywhere in Pennsylvania has broadband, has high-speed internet access. So thank you all for your participation. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. I'm not Lynn Herman. I'm Rich Irvin. I'm the state representative in the 81st Legislative District, which is part of Mifflin County, R-Huntingdon, and part of Center County. Just like Kerry and Adam, every day or weekly, we're dealing with the issue of either non-existent broadband internet service or very slow internet service in our districts. And we're dealing with complaints from our constituents. And we're hearing the fact that, at one point in time when internet first came about in 2000s, it was more of a luxury. But now it is becoming a necessity as any kind of working with government agencies, filing for businesses, needs to be done over the internet. We're getting to the point, we're going to hear from Dr. Gillio here today, who is actually with telemedicine. Telemedicine is something that we're moving forward on for community health programs, as well as our students in high school and grade schools are getting equipped with Chromebooks and personal computers that they are actually being sent home, and they need to connect to the internet so that they can get their homework assignment or keep up with different events going on in the school district. So it's very much an interesting and pressing issue at the state legislative level. I know that we've created broadband caucuses to try to brainstorm together nonpartisanly, Democrat, Republicans alike, so that we can try to help get rural broadband access throughout rural Pennsylvania. And we are in the heart of rural Pennsylvania right now. So we're definitely, as Adam said before, we thank everyone who has come together today so we can hear from you and more effectively take this message on what we need to do and what kind of laws or bills that we can introduce so that we can better equip rural Pennsylvania with broadband internet. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. We are also joined by Mark Smith of the Governor's Office. Mark, thank you very much for joining us. I know you're going to say a few words in a moment. And Lori Comp is here on behalf of Senator Jay Corman's office. If you need anything, go across the road. They'll be glad to take care of you. Today's meeting is actually a roundtable discussion by design. We did set it at 3 o'clock just because we wanted to see if anyone would show up. Actually, we were just kidding. But we know you're very busy, and we know it's important things going on in your lives, so we appreciate you being here. But we have specific groups of individuals here. We have providers, state officials, medical emergency people, education areas of different types of educational opportunities, as well as business and industry. And our goal is to have an individual from each of those different sectors speak a little bit about whether it's frustrations going on, technology we need to know about, things that might be happening. But the rest of you are here by invitation as well, and we want to hear from individuals. But the goal was to not have this in a lecture type forum where 2 or 3 people get to testify, we cross-examine them, we all go home. This is to be an instrumental dialogue for us each to learn from each other. We do not profess to be the experts on this, and we also believe that there's a lot of great creativity. We've seen it with many of your career paths throughout Mifflin, Juniata, and Center County areas. So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce a few people and let them speak on behalf of their specific industry, if they would give their name, and I guess I'm going to do that in the intro. And then we were going to open up for some dialogue because we want to hear specifically from you and we want you to engage. And I will close my comments here with, I hope this is the beginning of of a continued dialogue. Don't let it just stop today. Exchange business cards with each other. If you hear something someone's saying that you really like, you want to learn more about, please step to the plate on that. So without further ado, we will go to Rob Postal, Mifflin County Commissioners. Before I give him the microphone, I do want to thank Mifflin County and the Commissioner's Office and their IT department for helping us logistically get all this set up, as well as our wonderful PR staff. So thank you all very, very much for being gracious hosts, and Adam for being a host legislator. Without further ado, Mr. Postal.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Benninghoff, Representative Harris, and Representative Irvin for organizing this and leading this forum. I'll be speaking in broader terms. The county commissioners have a broad interest, obviously. Much of what's going to be said today we've heard before, but we need to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. The effects of an inadequate broadband infrastructure, particularly in our rural areas, is dire indeed. Mifflin County's involvement in this started in 2015 when Penn State said they would no longer have live classrooms in Mifflin County, but everybody could connect to the Penn State World Campus, and that should be sufficient. Well, we had our suspicions, and the commissioners sponsored a community forum in 2016. We formed a 10-member Internet Advisory Committee. Some of the members, if not all of the members, may be here today, and sent a survey to households and businesses in the county. There was a 28% return from households, and 52% stated they had poor and limited internet services. Now, there are people here today that are better versed, certainly than myself, that could talk about the technology and have the vocabulary dealing with broadband. Again, I certainly don't. I can't explain either amps and volts and three-phase power and all those things about electricity, but we all understand that electricity is vital for an acceptable standard of living in our rural areas, just as it is in our urban areas and other developments. So achieving broadband parity is just as important in the 21st century as rural electrification was in the 1930s. Not only do we need to attract talented entrepreneurs and economic development, but we need it for entertainment, we need it for education, we need it for healthcare. And like electricity a century ago, broadband is today's technological driver for economic and social equity. So all Pennsylvanians, no matter where they live, should have access to it for economic and social equity. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Steve Dunkel, our other county commissioner, for your support and being here today. We will now go to Ron Cowan, Geisinger Medical Center of Lewistown.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for being here. It demonstrates to me the importance you're placing on this issue. And by all means, it is important to this community. The first thing I would start by saying is, would you purchase a home that wouldn't have excuse me, internet access? I, for one, would not. So when you translate that to the healthcare arena, can we recruit professionals to this area if we can't provide basic quality of life services to them? We rely on those services even to communicate with them off hours. For example, a physician might be off hours but on call. We now use a secure messaging system called Tiger Text, which then a nurse and a physician can communicate about a patient and be able to provide orders to that nurse to take and move forward with the treatment of care without interrupting if the physician maybe is not at home, out driving somewhere, not near a facility. Connectivity. If we look at connectivity for Geisinger, we connect our clinics, our hospitals, and our people that work at home through broadband. Without broadband, there's no clinic in the community. So it is very essential for us, because we rely heavily on electronic medical record, for us to be able to have broadband access everywhere we go. Connecting family members to family members who are in the hospital. Imagine your child being admitted to Janet Weiss Children's Hospital, and you not having the means to be there all the time here at home. You would want to connect with them. Wouldn't you want to be able to do FaceTime with that child? Wouldn't you want the child to be able to reach out to you at a moment's notice if they became concerned about something or afraid? Communicating with patients with language barriers. We all use English, but we have patients in our community that are different languages. We use an interpretive service. It's also sign language. These have to be certified interpreters. We don't always have access to that person immediately, but through the internet, we're able to do so. Accessing healthcare information, I think, is essential to everyone in our community. It helps with our wellness initiatives. It helps lower our healthcare dollars, because if people have access to information about their health, their diagnosis, their treatment, they're able to take a positive action to try to prevent them from coming back into the healthcare system. I think the last thing that I would say on this topic is we all talk about the Internet of Things. Just today I learned of something that Geisinger's doing that I was not aware of, called a Red Vest. A Red Vest is a device given to a patient to wear in their home if they have Wi-Fi, if they have broadband access, that monitors them if they're a CHF patient, a chronic congestive heart failure patient. One of the key aspects to a patient that has that condition is monitoring fluids that they have in their bodies. So with this jacket, it's alerting healthcare professionals this person is increasing fluid intake, so they can make a phone call, say take another Lasix. They may say, you know what, you need to come into the emergency department, or you need to contact your local physician and make an appointment. So in kind of looking at all those things in one, you think about this makes it a very desirable place to work and live if you have broadband access. If you don't, it becomes very challenging. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Next, in the educational realm, we're going to hear from Chris Gill, Supervisor of Online and Blended Learning here in the Mifflin County School District.
Great. Thank you, Kerry. Of course, in our world of education, we see this digital divide that is really growing in the educational communities. School districts that have poorer populations, is going to affect us much more than a wealthy school district. And that's going to make our students less competitive, when they are leaving our school system and either going to post-secondary schooling or to the workplace. One of our goals as a school district, we would like to require that every student take at least one online class. We think that that's extremely important experience for students, because their post-secondary workforce training is all going to be, they're going to be exposed to online schooling. This past year, we had 567 students who did take at least one online class in our school district. However, many of those students that took an online class still don't have internet at home. So it presents lots of challenges for us to provide that experience with students that don't have that internet access. We do hold after school hours to allow kids to stay and through the early evening hours to have that internet access that they don't experience at home. I'll use myself as a great example. Right? I'm the Director of Online Learning, Digital Education for the school district. I do not have broadband access at home. So my experience is I end up going to the workplace in the evening quite a bit to do things, also to take my own children to the school so that they can use, whether the network or the Wi-Fi. Spend a lot of time in Dunkin' Donuts parking lot or the McDonald's parking lot, like a lot of people in Mifflin County I think probably do. I could get internet access. It's going to be very expensive because I would have to run the lines from the main road to my house. And I'm going to get to the point where I will do that. because my kids are going to be getting older and involved in the school system where they're just going to have to experience that. But I'm probably not most of Mifflin County, right? And we can talk about internet access as a physical component, but we can also talk about the affordability of internet access, and that's also a big impact on Mifflin County. The digital divide too, I think a lot of times parents will think, oh, you know, we have internet access at home, so that digital divide, that's not really affecting my kid's experience at school, but it actually does. Just a good example, a kid, let's say classroom teachers wants to do a math homework assignment. In one aspect, you could do that digitally. Right? You could use a school app and you could push that out as a homework assignment. But if 5 out of your 20 students don't have internet access, does that teacher really want to go that route? With the kids that the other 15 kids missed out on was that opportunity to do it digitally. And that could have been a better experience. Let's say everybody had that experience. They do their homework. That teacher at night gets a notification. Oh, you know, most of the kids did not do well in the quadratic equations assignment, right? They can plan immediately for the next day. In the traditional way we do something like that, that might take another day until they put their, you know, problems on the board, you know, in the traditional sense. So even parents that have kids that do have that internet access, okay, that digital divide really does impact all of us. And it's not just the families that don't have the internet access. Right? And there's a lot of things as a school district that we would love to do to prepare kids for 21st century skills. Collaboration would be another example. It's very hard to collaborate, you know, with 3 kids out of 5 in the group that don't have internet access at home. Right? So teacher less likely to do it. So obviously as a school district, what we want to see is any endeavors that can obviously increase internet access. But in Mifflin County in particular, probably the affordability of that internet access is also going to be big.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Next we have from the business and industry sector, Robert Reitman, Huntingdon County Business and Industry.
Thank you. Thank you to all the representatives in the Governor's office. I've been a system analyst, a product manager. I worked at Bell Labs, Nortel, Aris, and part of the cable and telephony and even the power line industries for broadband before I assumed the job as executive director of Huntingdon County Business and Industry. In our county, we were part of a 6-county process with the Southern Alleghenies region. And the number one priority that emerged from that planning process, which was a good process for all the 6 counties, was broadband. So, and it was followed by business development. I think the two go hand in hand. Route 22 runs through all of our counties, and I can actually say most of the counties, center excluded perhaps, but that once you step off of Route 22 too far, you go either north, south, east, or west of 22, and you enter a broadband desert. We have software companies in the north of our county that sprung from Penn State, and they struggle to maintain where they are in our regions far away from Route 22. And we basically are saying to our agriculture, our telemedicine people that live in the overwhelming majority of our landmass, that you can't do business here. I think that's a really significant thing to say, and I think we're stuck in previous century technology there, and that's you know, for a business development in a county, that's not something you want to say. I've talked to people in our behavioral health companies, some of our largest counties in our companies in our county, and they told me the biggest infrastructure thing that they face, because they monitor different houses and they need people on call, is broadband connectivity. So it's a big enabler to business to have this kind of technology available. along this school thing, I asked out of the blue what the top priority for our school superintendent was, and he said broadband. We need to know what the weather is like in our county on a snowy day. We need to have students that be able to do homework on their Chromebooks and in a good manner. You know, and those students don't just live along Route 22 in our county. But in spite of that, we have great fiber assets in our county in particular that would enable us to take that next step. So that's, I think, the linkage that I see between business and development and broadband in our county situation. But it's across a large amount of the landmass of our region and Pennsylvania as a whole.
Thank you very much. From the providers, we have Brian Marno, Broadband Cable Association of Pennsylvania. I know you came here to tell us you're going to lay all the miles out, and we wanted to have this discussion after tomorrow. Brian's actually been a good testifier. This is our second hearing and provides a good history on this. It's not a simple subject. I know they get 10 times as many calls as we do. Brian, on behalf of the providers, we appreciate your comments.
I appreciate that. The broadband cable industry represents about 18 cable operators in the state. Have invested about $8 billion plus in the last 25 years putting broadband in their systems. Pretty much everywhere we have a cable system, we provide broadband services. The issue is kind of how do we go from here to we're servicing 10 to 15 homes a mile, 12, 13 homes a mile, down to 7 homes a mile, or down to 5 homes a mile. How do we find a way to incent providers, the folks that are here at this table, to go out and do that? One of the issues that we've seen is that what is the role of government in this process? I think government can be a partner. Government is not in the business and should not be in the business of building broadband systems. The amount of energy and effort and money and reinvestment technology that's needed to build and run and manage a high technological broadband system is just absolutely incredible. These folks that next to me and our folks on Nittany Media here, which got fiber out of the pole outside, run 911 systems, they run emergency management systems, they run mission critical systems. So while there's some counties and individual economic developing agencies have been approached by consultants, said, listen, we've got an issue in the county, pay us some fee, we'll go out and do a study. They come back and say, listen, unless we contract with us, you're not going to be an exit on the broadband superhighway. But those entities could put fiber out on the curb, but it's the ongoing expense of running and maintaining, upgrading a system that's needed to run the operation. And the folks here, the CenturyLink, the Verizon, the Steve Samara's Telephone Association members, AT&T, Comcast, Nittany Media, those are the folks that do it professionally and they're good at it. How do we find a way to incent these providers to go down to 5 homes a mile? A couple things about that. One, is not going to be a one-stop shop solution. It's not going to be wireline or just wireless. It's going to be a combination of solutions to make things happen. And I'll guarantee you that the providers here want to provide the service. How do we find a way to make it economically viable that they can step up and service the small town and the rural areas that may not have the service? Does it mean an incentive to the cable operator so we go down and service down to 7 homes a mile? Is there an incentive to a wireless provider to go out and service the really rural folks that are out there? My mom is from Susquehanna County. She got electricity in 1942. It was a huge deal for them. And again, we're on the same sheet of music as everybody here, understand how important this is to healthcare, to education, to business, the business community, and we want to do everything we can do to help and support that. So I think one project, and I'll leave it off, be happy to answer questions later, is invest in programs and concepts that work. The New York State Broadband Fund is doing a great job. Mark Smith will talk a little bit about the Pennsylvania model of that, looking at things that work that we can replicate here in Pennsylvania. So we're excited about the opportunities, and we know the need that's out there, but we want to do everything we can to work with you folks and work with government to take the next step.
Thank you, Brian. With that lead-in, we will finish up with Mark Smith from the Governor's Office. I also want to acknowledge from the federal level we have Susan Gantz, U.S. Department of Agriculture. We appreciate agricultural perspective. As we know, farming and agriculture need technology as much as anybody else, and we want to make sure they are included in this dialogue. Mark, from the governor's office.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to be here today. So, the governor has taken an interest in this issue and really wants to find ways to expand access to every Pennsylvanian. In March, he announced the Pennsylvania Office of Broadband initiative to do just that and to accomplish that goal by the end of 2022. Now those are and deliver service that is at a very high performance tier of 100 megabits or above. So, you know, from the perspective of the governor's office, this is an issue that he thinks is critical. Just like everybody here has spoke to, it's the education, it's the healthcare piece, it's public safety, it's the economic development. And the fact that this is going to be not only critical for today and our discussions for today, but what is this going to mean for Pennsylvania and its development and competitiveness 5, 10, 20 years down the road. So this is an issue that he thinks is critical to fix, that it's a key piece of infrastructure that we will need as a state to go forward. And so we've done some work in the past few months to try to get the office up and running and to support providers. As Brian mentioned, to basically incentivize private providers to go out to the homes that aren't reached yet. And so we're doing basically this, and we're taking a look at this in 2 stages. Right now we're running a program to incentivize providers to bid in the Federal Communications Commission's reverse auction, which is an auction to win subsidies to provide service in rural areas. And Pennsylvania has a robust list of those areas that are up for auction. So we're offering incentive funds from the state to providers to do 3 things. To get more investment in Pennsylvania, but also to ensure that it's done more quickly and at a higher performance tier than actually the FCC requires. So we're actually requiring a faster build out by mid-2022, and we're requiring anybody who accepts the state funding to offer 100 megabits or above. We're trying to bring business and development into Pennsylvania through that program, but that's not really going to capture all of the areas in Pennsylvania that are without service. So, you know, stage 2 will be a much more robust program that we're going to hopefully work with the legislature on finding a way to fund to ensure that we get those lines run to the rest of Pennsylvania and do that in a very succinct and short time frame because this is a critical issue that we're discussing here today. So we're excited, we're ready and willing to work with everybody here. We've worked with providers over the last few months on the first program, and we're just now going out to get some feedback on what our second program, our larger scale program, will look like. And hopefully we can come up with something that we can all work together on and get the job done.
Thank you, Mark, and on behalf of the governor, we do appreciate you being here and his efforts to expand this. I was listening to your comments, and we talked about fixing it. I think it's more about finishing the issue because we're going to constantly be building this infrastructure.
Sure.
While the rest of you think about things you may want to talk about or share, I'm going to throw something out to Brian Marno and to Chris. Chris, you talked about maybe putting in your own infrastructure in order to do this. I'm curious from a cost perspective, and I think some of our listeners need to understand that there is a significant investment to be made to get those last miles or two. If either one of you want to comment on that, you on a personal level, and Brian from an industry perspective, it's not that simple to just plunk down a couple more poles and run some more lines out there. I think just to kind of round up where we were, I'd like to hear those figures at all possible.
Yeah, the quote I got for running a line from our main road to our house is about $600.
Brian, anything as far, I mean, I know we were up in Susquehanna, we talked about that last mile or two, and I think most people are pretty surprised at the cost involved. And it's not a matter of willingness on your part, but obviously it's an investment and return on those investments that dictate this, regardless of what business you're in, no different in your business. Anything you want to add to that?
No question. We've got experts that are here, and we need to talk specifically about pole costs and make-ready charges and things of that nature in Mifflin County, which is critical. But how do we incent that provider to go out and do that? We want to make money, we want to extend the plant, but how do we find a way to aggregate demand? How do we find a way to make that an economically viable proposition? The other part of that is, again, as I mentioned before, once that putting the fiber out there is great, but after that, you need ongoing upgrades, ongoing maintenance, ongoing emergency services. When the snowfall comes, when the storm knocks the power out, how do you put it back up? And that's what these guys do, and no one gives them a lot of credit for it, but that's part of the operation. So as we look at what is that incentive that we give providers to take that extra step and provide service out to a farmhouse or a more of a rural area that we're not there now.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen?
Kerry, Steve Samara from the Pennsylvania Telephone Association.
Yes.
On the cost issue, the PTA represents all of the local exchange carriers in you guys' territory. We don't represent Verizon because they're not rural, but CenturyLink, Tom Bailey, and Windstream, which I think is in your territories.
Right.
We have for years been providers of last resort and regulated by the PUC, so we've served in uneconomic areas for 100 years with landline service, and now we're involved in getting broadband out to everybody. Act 183 from 2004 is we're only the state in the nation that I know of that has a universal broadband deployment statute. And don't throw anything at me. You can snicker if you want, but back in 2004, broadband was 1.544 meg, because that was DSL. It was 14 years ago, so that's the bogey we've hit, and CenturyLink has hit, and Verizon has hit, and all my member companies have hit. We know a lot of people want more than that now. Mark's talking about 100 meg. The FCC's definition is 25 meg. So we're in the process of trying to do that. But to Brian's point and to your point, Kerry, and to others, it is a dollars and cents proposition now. We are operating in parts of the Commonwealth where it's simply you cannot make a business model that makes sense to any provider. We need money to do it now. We're out in the very rural parts of the Commonwealth. There was a study just released this week on a national level. This is a $61 billion proposition to get 25 meg out to everybody. Pennsylvania, I would say it's a B number, not an M number, to get that money out, to get 25 meg out to everybody. And something else to think about, and Tom can talk about this as well, is just because you build it doesn't mean everyone signs up for it. I know the hospitals want it. I know the school districts want it. I know there are businesses that need it from an economic development perspective. But from a business perspective, if you get take rates that are under 50% or worse, you have to factor that in. It's crass, it's dollars and cents, but how do you incentivize companies to go out and do this when you know not everyone is signing up for the service? And those are the challenges that we all have. The wireless guys, the cable guys, the landline guys, we all have those challenges going forward. So Mark and I have talked many times. He just was at my annual convention this week and gave a presentation to my members about how we get this done. We're willing to partner with anybody. To Brian's point, I don't think a government model is the best way to go about doing it, but partnering with us and the providers who are out there already doing this type of stuff is a good way to talk about it. And we think we can make some headway there, and we look forward to continuing to talk to you guys and to Mark and anyone else who's interested. It's a great turnout here. I'm really impressed at 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon that this room is full. It's great because we're all open to ideas, and we want to partner with people, and we need help to get this done. So,
Thank you very much. A lot of good, caring, bright people here.
Quick question. Currently, is there a regulation or a speed requirement that telephone companies or broadband providers need to provide to their customers at this point in time?
1.544 is what Act 183 says. That's just for my guys. That's not for a wireless or the cable guys. That's just for the regulated providers. Yeah, using any technology out there.
As you know, and I've struggled with what we can do to help rural broadband since I've been in office for 4 years now. And you know, I've had different ideas thrown out to me. One was the idea of maybe having your electric co-ops getting on board with it and providing it to their rural customers. And I've talked to them where a lot of your board members of co-ops, they're not willing to put that investment out because the technology is changing. I mean, we just went from 4G to 5G, and I think in some of the cities right now, they're afraid that they put that investment out, next thing you know, it'll no longer be needed. The 4G, 5G will cover the rural areas and pick up just as much as what they would have, and they won't have that customer demand there any longer. But one of the people I'd like to recognize here, maybe he would like to speak on it, in the 81st District in Huntingdon County, there's a group of people that are frustrated for their lack of speed or lack of internet, and they've actually banded together and they're trying to create a co-op of their own. And Jason Weaver, I think, is here, and I would like maybe, Jason, if you could speak a little bit on the group, what you're doing, and just summarize what you're trying to do. I think it's a very, you know, cutting edge that these people are taking it within their own hands in order to try to get high-speed internet into their homes.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know where to start. There's so much to talk about. When I hear what everybody's saying here. Again, this group of people came to me. My background is I spent 15 years with Verizon as the operation manager. Nobody hit me with anything. And then I spent another 3 years as a director for Windstream, doing wireless operations and that kind of stuff. So anyways, this group of people came to me and asked me what we could do to solve this problem. And I think it's a brilliant idea. The fact that we all know, and a lot of these guys have said this in the room, the big guys aren't coming. I mean, that's just what they've got. They just come to the realization that the big players aren't coming because there's no money in it. And I'm not faulting any of the big players for that. There just isn't any money into it. Somebody's got to pay for that. So the concept that we're doing is a grassroots concept where, you know, our customers come to us ahead of time. We know going into it. Now, we're right in the middle of our formation. Our legal paperwork just got submitted last week. We're going to be a cooperative. It's actually the Mill Creek Broadband Cooperative. And we're also going to be a nonprofit. And there's the key to it. The key to it is we're not looking for a profit. We're just looking to solve a rural problem in rural America. And what we're looking to do is we're looking to template the process. So our goal is to get this process figured out, to get all the weeds out of the way, and then deliver this process to the other groups of individuals who can reproduce it all over again. There's an organization out there called the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Does a lot of talking about broadband and a lot of things that can be done by individuals. And again, I don't mean to cut players out of the game here because that's what's going to happen. It's going to cut, but let's face it, these are all players that there's no profit to come here anyways. So that's the goal is we have a couple sites already set up, one being in Mill Creek. We have the top of a mountain. We're going to get our backhaul, our middle mile we're going to get from another company who's going to microwave it to us. Our last mile is going to be wireless. There's going to be a couple combinations of technologies. As it grows, individuals are coming to us that are in different pockets of different areas that we have to implement some different technologies, but we're in the planning phases of all that. We have a couple of really solid members who are assisting with this, and the key to this is that they're coming to us. We know in this program, every widget gets paid for ahead of time. So we band the individuals in a community together. They tell us what their individual investments will be in this project, and once that investment reaches a certain level, then we deploy the project in that area. Things that we're looking for, that, you know, I'm not a big proponent of taking government money, but the things we're looking for is like a Mark Smith. I think you and I spoke on the phone, or I spoke to your partner in crime. Middle mile backhaul is very expensive for us. If the government, the way I see it is, if the government wants to help an organization like a cooperative subsidize our middle mile for us, help us pay for the most expensive ongoing expense, which is by far our backhaul to get us to the internet. The rest of the stuff, as another gentleman spoke about, the technologies are changing. They're changing for the better. There's companies out there that have they have disruptive pricing. And again, you shut me off anytime because I can go like this for days.
That's my job, but we'll take it.
Be careful. So there's companies out there that have disruptive pricing on this equipment, and it helps cooperatives, organizations like this get into the game. Now, we're not talking, they have equipment capable of 100 meg. I'm going to break this down into two sectors, and Dr. Gilio is probably going to talk a ton about this, but one is what I call, and I think Dr. Gilio would agree with this, humanitarian internet. This is internet that is what you guys speak of, we're talking 100 meg. Well, 100 meg is needed for humanitarian internet. Can my child contact the school? Can I get telemedicine? Can I contact the unemployment office? Can I contact the welfare office? Can I contact the public library? Can I do basic research on the air? We don't need 100 meg for this. So I'll let Dr. Gilio dig into all the details of that. But so we're proposing some sort of partnership where we can pick up some sort of funding, creative ways of providing humanitarian internet at zero cost to individuals, and making our money elsewhere. When I say making our money, again, it's a nonprofit cooperative. All we have to do is stay afloat. We're not looking to pay for our homes or our boats or whatever. We're just looking to stay afloat. So I'll cut it off there. If there's any other questions, feel free to ask me. But again, I'll do this for hours, so I'll just stop.
No, thank you very much. Michael.
Yeah, Jason, that's a fantastic idea. We call it appropriate technology. We've established how important it is for broadband in terms of economic development and the way we run that. I can provide example. Well, 22 years ago, a guy that had a lot of foresight, Dr. Ken Stuck. Many people here know Dr. Stuck, right? Can you hear okay? Okay. Anyway, he had this idea. He said, there's this new thing called the internet. He was the executive director of the school district in Juniata County. He said that there's this new thing called the internet. I don't know what all it can do, but I know it can be a great boon for education. But he said that he had an opportunity with the IU to put one point of presence into Juniata County. He said that I don't want it just to be available to the honor students or the faculty or the high school seniors. He wanted it to be available to everybody. And he asked if there was some way we could do that over cable. And we did that. But to give a little bit more context here, that was '96. In 2002, we acquired a regional internet company, an ISP, based out of Altoona. And when we looked at the mom and pop businesses that had gone global with their marketing, the ones that had their own websites, 80% were from Juniata County. So you see how important it is in an early time for that. Yeah, I had a good friend that says the best, well, he says it this way, the best predictor of future performance is past performance. And likewise, sometimes it's good to see a little bit of history to see where we are, to see how we got here, so we can make a good plan for where we're going. Bill, it was a little over a year ago we formed that internet committee, right? 2 years ago. Yeah, my clock has sped up quite a bit, Mike, as you know how busy things are getting. I came to that meeting thinking that we were pretty well off. We're really blessed to live in this community, this area that has excellent transportation. We have good workers. We have a lot of good things for industry. Look outside. I mean, this is a great place to be. We had fiber into our hospitals, our medical community, the expanded campuses were all connected. We had our school districts, fiber there. Thanks to Doug Cunningham, we had 10 gigabit, and this is what, at least 5 years ago. We had 10 gigabit connections between our school buildings. Our industry, Standard Steel, has a 100 gigabit network when they're to do their automation. Now, I was thinking that the world was pretty good, but I came to this meeting and I found that it's not that the kids don't have internet at school, it's when they go home that they have trouble doing their homework. So we did the survey, we found some areas that were in need. Atlantic Broadband, part of the community down there, we enabled them to do turn up internet, and I think that's going well. Mike, have you had feedback on that?
Yeah.
And that's going pretty well?
Doing well.
There was a mom and pop business here, cable was Zampelli. And again, the people from here are familiar with that. They had Belleville and McVeigh and Mount Pleasant Mills, Port Trevorton, Liverpool. Anyway, they were not really, didn't buy into the internet thing, and although we tried to help them to implement that, they weren't in a position that they could invest in the technology and the dollars to deploy it. So we acquired those. Belleville, anywhere in Belleville, you can get 125 meg that has cable service. McVeigh is taking a lot longer to roll out than we expected, but we're getting there. So in terms of those parts of the county, we're doing okay. Now, given that he who is good with a hammer thinks everything looks like a nail, you know, I tend to look at things a lot with, you know, DOCSIS. DOCSIS is a fantastic technology. We can go into Unilink protocol and why it, but anyway, appropriate technology, and that's what Jason's talking about there. Ideally, fiber to everybody's house would be great, but Chris, $600? Let me back up just a breath there. We have houses in this community that would take more than $1 million to build fiber to. Okay, but as long as you're along that route 22, 322, 522, the major arteries and the centers of population, I mean, that's where it makes fiscal sense to deploy broadband. Wireless is another technology, although it's, and Mike, you've tested it out. 5G is something that I don't think is going to get here anytime soon because of the rural nature of our areas. It's going to be a great boon for the largely dense populated cities like Harrisburg and that. But it has a limited range, and it's great for multiplying that RF domain so you have less people in the same Wi-Fi hotspot, if you will. But to solve our problems here, I think, Bill, you're right in doing the survey, trying to figure out where the needs are. I'd like to have the goals like Nate Smith has, that everybody should have fiber, but in the real world, I don't see that government is going to be able to pay for it, or anybody, for that matter, to pay for that level. But you have fiber, I would put at the top. Once it's installed, it's the least expensive to maintain. Then wireline, whether DSL or DOCSIS or that, and then finally wireless. Wireless is great because you don't have to run wires. It has a downside because it doesn't get through mountains very well, or trees. But the downside to having to run wires is a new thing. You know, I serve on the FCC's Broadband Deployment Advisory Committee. And trust me, the issues that we're facing in this room are not unique to us. The whole country is working on this. But again, everybody has their own perspective. We've got the people in the cities that don't have enough broadband. We don't have affordable broadband. But the biggest challenge is where we don't have any broadband. We have the Native American, the reservations where they don't want the towers up. We have communities that say that you have to put all facilities underground, and you know how well wireless works underground. Anyway, with the VDAC, we've worked on developing some model code for states and for communities to try to fill in the gaps. It's just model, it's an example, so you don't have to hire that consultant that is going to have to charge you a lot to come up with the words. But the biggest deployment barrier that I see that is a recent one, just since the BTOP monies went out there and the Kinber project came out, we've lost trust with our pole owners, and they'll no longer allow us to do our own engineering. And since the engineering costs are passed through, there's no price control on it. So they're, in my case, they're hiring a company out of Georgia to come measure the poles. We have to pay $300 a pole before we do anything, just to see if there's a pole there. Then on top of that, we'd have to pay for pole rearrangements if it's necessary, and then our labor and whatnot. Let's see, Kerry, does your district go into Snyder County at all?
No.
Okay. Hey, Craig, what's the name of the company down in the camouflage place?
Moonshine Camo.
Yeah, Moonshine Camo. They were going to have to move out of the area because they couldn't get sufficient broadband. They were running on some bonded DSL, and that was as much as they could get. We found a way that we could, we figured out what we thought our costs were going to be to build down there. We knew what our material costs would be, we knew our labor costs, and we gave them a quote for that. We got a bit of a help from CEDACOG, and we were able to put the fiber in there. It saved 60-some jobs, but when it came back, my engineering costs were $40,000 more than what we were anticipating. So we're upside down on that build by a big amount. Now, remember, every dime that I get has to come from my customers. The other thing that I'm having trouble with, I got to sit, you don't mind if I sit down, is the franchise taxes. Now, the franchise taxes are not very fair in my view because they're not applied, they're applied to cable subscribers but not to Dish or anything like that. that makes me 5% less competitive. Now, the less people I have pulling the wagon, the less people paying for those poles at pull rental, the higher my overall costs are becoming. Now, back in '96, when we did that network for the Juniata County School District, we did that as a community service project. That was out of pocket because we had a rainy day fund set aside. That's not something I can do anymore and stay in business. So anyhow, if from my perspective, if we find a way to apply, like you're suggesting, Jason, prepay it, do appropriate technology, do the wireless where it's going to reach, get the fiber backhaul to it, we can get a pretty good network that's going to cover everything. And to help us do that from the state, if you could help us out with tax credits, we're paying somewhere almost in the 40% taxes, and that would that hurts pretty bad.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks, Kerry.
It's a lot of good information. Nope, very good. Doc, I know you wanted to give a little angle from the medical perspective.
I just because my name was brought up, my name is Rob Gilliam. I'm a doctor at J.C. Blair Hospital. I'm not an expert on broadband. I moved to Huntingdon County a year ago, being recruited to help create a new economic model for keeping healthcare sustainable by taking care of the entire population and improving the health of everybody. So if people are healthier longer, there's less healthcare costs. And so with great excitement, I moved. I rented the house. The hospital suggested I rent only 3 miles from the hospital, only to learn that my wife, who teaches for Penn State online, and I, a telemedicine enabling doctor, had no internet, no cable, no nothing. When I called Comcast, I was treated with disdain when I reacted negatively to a $100,000 proposal to string just cable TV and basic internet to my house 3 miles from where I could see it on the pole. I mean, I felt like going out at night and just running the wire myself with my neighbor who suggested we do that. And you know exactly the neighbor I'm talking about. But the point I'm getting at, though, is I had my face slapped, really, in an awakening of total ignorance as a very well-trained healthcare provider, innovative around the country, working with the White House after 9/11, working with the Surgeon General's office after Katrina. And I came to Huntingdon, and it's a bigger disaster area from a standpoint of public health and safety. With the Amtrak Norfolk Southern line running through with massive trains along population centers with absolutely no way for our first responders to communicate at the worst level, we have to subsidize and have that be working better for our first responders. But I'm very interested. I think I'm not lucky enough to be in a wonderful system that Dr. Kalman is in with Geisinger. Who knows, whoever buys J.C. Blair Hospital will see what system I'm in, and we might be colleagues. But Geisinger could afford to hook fiber optics, connect its system together, and brilliantly did it on its own, more economically than the providers were able to do. We're not able at J.C. Blair to do that. We have a good half of our patient population has no internet access. I'm interested in the last inch, not the last mile. And the last inch is really to a patient's body. If they have a telephone connection, anyone here from Verizon or AT&T, or if they have an internet connection with wireless Comcast, I can save my healthcare payer $50,000 per patient per year with congestive heart failure. So I think what I'm suggesting, sir, is, Mr. Hain, when you were talking about your fees and the taxes and others in this room, I want us to be thinking about policy changes that may make it better to do different economic modeling. We're using a 20th century subscription-based service and taxes and infrastructure and fees when we could have a 21st century value-based payment. If an internet connection to that person who's a mile down the road that costs $50,000 per mile, if I can save that on the one patient I've broken even, if there's 2 or 3 or 4 more, or if it's already, now I've done it to that farthest patient, then those connection fees for the neighbors start making economic sense because we've paid for the long haul to the sickest. I can give you the exact address of the 26 people I want to look it up to this minute, right after this meeting. We could put it on a map and bid it out if we wanted to. That's the level we're at with trying to figure it out, thinking through, could I share the cost savings in healthcare back to the cable provider in a different economic model? This is why I love Jason I'm worried that he doesn't have the capability to take on the whole state and the whole world, and to take on the weather, and to take on the tower fell down or the lightning hit it. We don't have that. That's where you need the backhaul provider who's also a partner. And that's where I'm looking for the right backhaul or middle mile provider to support someone like Jason. What we've done with him is we're saying, we have an antenna at our hospital, costs us nothing. Put the tower on that. Let's light up downtown Huntington for free. Let's light up downtown Millcross, and let's hook into Kinburg, right there at Mount Union, and let's light it up for free at a low enough speed so kids can do their homework and people can fill out their tax forms. And for folks that are getting very intensive telemedicine, let's say from Geisinger or from Blair or from Hershey, maybe there's a $10 or $20 or $30 a day fee for that hookup, because we're creating more value and we could subsidize. With Jason, we've talked about, could we get a partner company, picking the company. I'm not saying, I won't say the name of a company, but a large company in Mount Union. Could they maybe get fiber, but in fiber and or wireless, and we install it for free in exchange for 1% of their revenue, or 10% of their orders that come through on the internet line. A totally different model. Much like a lawyer gets a contingency fee, we can turn it on high speed to a colleague and share their income. Totally different models of payment. So policy that might allow us to do that would be of interest to me from a government standpoint. I firmly support subsidizing the Comcast and others with a wonderful enterprise system for backhaul. But a third thing, and I'm not sure if this is so naive that it's ignorant, but this is my chance. I got my minute here. Mark or others, it's profitable for these companies in the high dense areas, let's say Philadelphia, massive buildings with the people that are in this business, they're making money somewhere. Couldn't we just require them to do their 5G installs at the places with the least service and work backwards? They'd be motivated like crazy because they'll lose a fortune for 2 or 3 years. But once it's installed there, they're allowed to go make their billions in downtown Philly and Pittsburgh. Just reverse it. Make the incentive to them is install it rurally where you're making a negative 10% profit, so that you can make the 300% profit or whatever it is. And those are not accurate numbers; those are just a naive thing. But you're making, when you have 1,000 households per mile versus 1 household per mile, the massive profits. Delay those until you install in the most needed areas with at least the 100 meg service that the governor very wisely has the vision. This would put Pennsylvania on the map as a place to locate, as a place to vacate. In terms of wanting to get my health care here, educate my kids here, locate my company here. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to this group and for your interest.
Thank you, Doc. This is a kind of a catalyst for different type of thinking that we were hoping for a roundtable discussion rather than having testimony at a hearing. Interesting to hear from responses maybe from the business and industry, or Mike and the rest of you guys. You're hearing this stuff. Although, young lady, I think somebody in the back had her hand up. Apologize, didn't see you at first. You can come up forward a little bit more if you want.
I'm Kate Sumler, and I'm part of the Mifflin County Broadband Initiative started. And we hear and cite deficiency and need over and over and over again. The last two speakers I've been very interesting because they've thrown some other ideas out on the floor. But I'm asking you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Benninghoff, what do you need from the public other than needed deficiencies? You have a program in New York that's working. You have in Tennessee, North Carolina, Kutztown University, what Mr. Weaver is trying to get going. What do you need from us that you're not getting to take back to the governor and so on?
Well, that's the sole purpose of today, obviously, is to have this fact-finding mission. I think we're learning a lot of different initiatives. In fact, we've got a public organization working on it I think is great. So I was very honored that the governor's sent staff person here as well to be part of that. I think we are here to be fact-finding different ideas. We've had some great suggestions already, and your continued advocacy is obviously a very important part of that.
And I agree, and I think this group here today, I didn't expect to see this many people either. I think it's tremendous. So I thank you for bringing this roundtable to us today. Again, I guess I'm a more action-oriented person, and I'm asking, what can we give you that you're not getting?
Well, this is hopefully the beginning of more dialogues and action. I think we've heard that it doesn't only have to be the high-tech fiber everywhere. I think that's what some of us want to hear. My staff will tell you, I challenge them all the time. If you're king for a day, you tell me what you would do in this situation. That's kind of what we're wanting to hear from some of our providers, so thank you very much.
Can I just speak to that, Kerry?
Yes.
I think it's a good time. In our efforts, it's been important for us to understand what does Pennsylvania really look like from a broadband perspective, and so I think it's important for folks to know that we've done, a lot of homework on, at the local level, what providers are providing what service, where those services really exist at the county level, and if we're going to do something on a large scale in Pennsylvania, how much does that really cost? And what would the state's share of that be? And so, this is all, we have to sort of lay the groundwork for, what the state can really do and what it can afford to do against what is the actual challenge. And up to this point, I think, one of the frustrations is when I first started getting into this issue was you do kind of hit that wall of, okay, we've defined we know there's a problem, we know it costs a lot of money, but what is the scope of the problem and how much does it really cost? And so that's one of the efforts of the Office of Broadband Initiatives right now is we're trying to make those determinations, and we've gone out and hired the professional consultants that can help us through that process. And so we're currently engaged in that on a county by county basis of going through and working with folks at the local level and combing through data that currently exists about where providers serve, what level of service they provide. So just so you know, ma'am, we are working on that level of detail so that we can actually do something meaningful and partner with the private sector to solve, finish this effort for Pennsylvania.
And I'll just add that this is being videotaped. I intend on sharing this with the Technology Committee in the Senate, as well as my own members that are not able to be here today. It will be available for the governor's office, and it will actually be played on PCN. So this is the beginning, hopefully, of some great other dialogues and some action following that. Somebody else had Michael. Young man right in front of me.
I'm with Jason here from Mill Creek Broadband Cooperative. And I sat here and listened with this young lady back here that we know the needs, but we're not doing anything about it. I know that we have meeting after meeting. And we go back to 1993 when Pennsylvania allowed a telco, Verizon, I'll name them. And there's nobody here from Verizon? No, I didn't think there would be. Was given incentives, tax cuts, raised my bill, to put fiber optic throughout the state of Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and it's never been done. I don't have it because I live out in the country. They're not going to spend the money to do that. But yet, Verizon has made $40 billion or more. And I don't know if that's just Pennsylvania or these other states combined. I've heard as high as $100 billion. Yet Pennsylvania, the PUC, and these other state governments have allowed that to happen. Now, here we are, and we've got cable, we've got telcos here, and I know that it costs a lot of money to run fiber or to run a line to me to get my DSL or internet. What I want the governor to do is to look at ideas like that Jason has here, that we have, trying to serve our small community, hopefully spread that to other communities. But yet, my understanding is you're only looking at the telcos. You're only looking at the big business. They're not going to run it. They're not going to run it to me. We gave up on that. When it was $188,000 to run to 6 Mile to 60 families. And that's if every family would go in with it. So I want to know, when can we get help with trying to start our own business, our own co-op, get some money to put our equipment in and get this thing running? Thank you.
Before you leave, make sure my two staff people will pass have your name and address, and we will keep you up to date with the initiatives not only legislature but the governor's office is doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jason.
Not to belabor, just to add to his, what we hope to happen is set aside everything else that's going on in the room with the other providers. We hope that the government will take a look at this like they did, in the early 1900s when it was power cooperative. They put things in place. I don't want to be looked at. I can't be looked at with the people in this room. What it is I'm trying to do. It has to be a separate initiative to where the government realizes that broadband is a utility. It is an essential utility, just like it was with the power in those days. And create a program, maybe give me protections under Article 73 like the power cooperatives are. They have special protections that it's going to cost us a little bit extra to operate under a co-op because we're not afforded the same protections. Just give it a second look. Give it a second look and let the people solve their own problem in the areas that they have the talent and the will to do it. They'll do it. I mean, they're out there.
History has proved that over and over. I appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, and just to say, I mean, we aren't opposed to any solution at this point. We actually just sent out a survey from our office to all the local governments to try to capture what are the projects going on right now, because at the state level we didn't really know other than hearsay. So if we didn't capture you in that, touch base with Emma, who we've talked to before, and make sure that she gets that to you. And it's just a series of questions that kind of gives us a better definition of what you guys are trying to accomplish. And we're trying to build that into, we don't want to duplicate efforts or overbuild or anything. We want to get this done.
There's a lot of things to eat here. I think we just need to eat them one at a time. Try to eat the whole sandwiches.
There's been a lot of great suggestions of other approaches. I like that. Other individuals.
Hey, Kerry, just wanted to mention, Jason sit up on something, and the doc and gentleman here and the lady in the back. I mentioned how expensive it is to do this, and these guys will all agree with me, but he hit upon a facet of this that was included in the Act from 2004, which is called the Bona Fide Retail Request Program, which aggregates some level, we would consider to be a very minimal level of demand in each serving area, so that made it more financially attractive for the provider to go and serve. I mean, you only had to sign up for a year, but as opposed to billing it and hope they come, which isn't financially attractive for anybody these days, these guys kind of hit on something that, and you obviously have some background in the industry, so you know.
Kind of stole the concept.
That idea was kind of laughed at when we proposed it 14 years ago. Well, no one's going to take the time to aggregate demand, and Jason's done it. So I think that's not an end-all be-all to solve all our problems, but little pockets like that where you can show the provider that there's some level of interest, that they can go in and get 50 people as opposed to 2, just throwing numbers out there, is important. And so I applaud you for making the effort. It's something that factors into all of our decisions when we decide where we're spending our venture capital, limited venture capital, to get out there and provide broadband. So it's good for you. I mean, that's
very good. I thought you had your hand raised. Other thoughts, comments? Young man in the white shirt.
Yes, hi. I'm Mark Pedus. I'm with Nippy Media. We're a smaller local provider, not a big Titan like Comcast or the others. Since we have legislators here, may I make an appeal to you about the law?
Sure.
One of the things that has been my observation is that telecommunications law in this country has been oriented to the telephone industry. And in the FCC, you've got different divisions. One division that I've worked with for a long time, I come from a broadcast background, 5 years with the cable business, is that most of that is on what's called the Mass Media Bureau, and its whole regulatory orientation will not overwhelm the smaller provider. We built the country's TV stations, radio stations, cable operators as small businesses. But on the other end of the FCC, and I know I'm talking about federal law, but there is relevance to state law, you have what's called the wireline division. And the wireline division's genesis was regulating a monopoly called the Bell Telephone Company of America. And so the whole law and funding approach is oriented toward a monopoly. The big mistake that I'm seeing that's going on is that the funding that's going on to help with this is operating through that wireline division and assumes a mentality of a monopoly, of a large-scale company. We tried to participate as a company in the latest, what's called CAF2. And by the time you get involved with it, you say, forget it. It's not worth it. It's more hindrance than it is help. And I want to plead with the legislators. Don't do it. Please don't have the mentality that it's this great big monopoly. Remember, we're going to solve this thing through guys like you, smaller operators like us. That's how we're going to get it into the pockets of rural America. I don't want to speak negatively against the Comcast or whatever of the world, but believe me, they're not racing to deploy in rural. But we're a company, we're here, we're doing it. But there can't be a legislative or regulatory scheme that has its genesis out of regulating BTA, Bell Telephone Company of America. We've got to stop that. We've got to get regulations that make sense for the 21st century. Thanks for your time.
Most of that hindrance comes through the regulatory route.
Pardon me?
Most of the hindrance you're talking about comes from the regulatory route.
It's that, but also the funding of the program that Mark, and I appreciate what the state is doing to help with what was Connect America Fund, but that whole structure comes out of wireline division of the FCC, and it's a very complicated, difficult regime, and from a smaller standpoint, you say, forget it, it's just not worth it. And you don't want that to happen. Just real quick, I had a conversation with the township supervisor today. Mike had mentioned that we've acquired a smaller neighboring cable operator, and it's not in this particular county, but he was begging me for service. So I do what I usually do. I pull up the map, I'm looking where he lives, I'm seeing our nearest approach, I'm counting the poles, I'm doing the math, I'm putting it in my spreadsheet and going, oh my. We're not going to get our money back. You can't operate a business in deficit. So, but I don't want to waste the time. That point has been made a lot. I think the one point I do want to make is that remember the regulating, the law first needs not to make an assumption of the telephone days. And I know people have used the word utilities, but one of the worst things you can do is class it as a utility. Because that is not, look at what's going on with our electrical grid. And frankly, I don't mean to slam the telephone industry. Look what your broadband is from the telephone company. These are utilities. Try to regulate in a way that promotes fairness for the customer and the market, but don't encumber us. That's critical. And I'm going to say something else. I think funding should also consider something like a tax break for companies like ours that are doing it, or private citizens that are involved with it. That's one of the options as well.
I appreciate that clarification and other extensive dialogue. Good stuff. I mean, that's the whole goal, is to be a catalyst, dialogue with some other information today. Other input. Hold on one moment. We're going to get the gentleman in the back. David Kerr.
Dave Kerr, AT&T. I think I might be the only one in the wireless industry. Just a couple comments. We had some reference to 5G here earlier. The industry, AT&T and our competitors, are moving very fast in that direction. I cannot quibble with the sentiment that Mifflin County, Juniata County is going to be first in 5G. That simply is not the case. I think we all recognize that. But I do want to say one thing that I think it's important to keep an eye on. I agree with all the provider comments about the expense and such, but as we do deploy 5G and starting in large areas, high density areas in the country and in Pennsylvania, when you look at the fees and you look at some of the hurdles that we have, and I did hear 300, that's a little high. We're not making profits like that.
What level of profit do you make at the big population centers?
First of all, we don't disclose that, but are they more profitable than rural areas? Absolutely.
Sure.
Are there hurdles, though, that are thrown up in terms of fees and deployment? Absolutely. And all I'm suggesting is take a look at that across all of our industries too. Fees that could be assessed, maybe in high density or high populated areas, assuming that you buy into the concept that capital has limits, whether you're a small company and doing good work like what you're doing with Broadband Cooperative, or large companies, which we are certainly one, capital has limits. And if you're pinching the balloon on one side, then it's going to expand on another, is my only point. Keep an eye on some of those fees and what we as an industry have to face, even in more populated areas.
Thank you, David. Yeah.
This has just been, great feedback, and it is a tough issue because capitalism sort of has a funny way of working, and I think we have to be leery as legislators of trying to push in one direction, because I see probably a technological advancement coming in the next 5 to 10 years that maybe none of us see, and maybe this is all we need. And I know Tom doesn't want to hear this, but sometimes my CenturyLink goes down, and I can do a heck of a lot of those same things right on this thing. So, I mean, I understand where everyone's coming from, and I don't know what the answer is from us as far as, should we be putting dollars into these initiatives? But I want to keep hearing from all of you. Let's keep this going.
I'm sorry, can I speak to that?
Sure.
This scares me, and I apologize. Do you know what they pay for speed in their industry? How much they pay for their backhaul, or their frequencies, the frequencies that they utilize to provide service? And I could be really speaking at a turn here, but they'll never ever, at the prices they pay for frequencies, be able to provide you what you think you need off of a cell phone. Okay. It's too expensive. That kind of.
And that's things we need to hear. We need to know that this isn't the
I can be speaking out of turn here, but you can step up and.
Well, I will say this too. I mean, keep in mind, every cell site that's built in a rural cell site, 250-foot tower needs electricity and backhaul. Mark Smith and I were talking about this morning. Deployment of a rural cell tower that we're building in another part of the state. Our challenge of getting backhaul, and what we typically do is we'll go out basically in what I call an RFP process. If we're in a CenturyLink territory or any one of Steve's member companies or the cable company and other providers too, we'll put basically an RFP out. We're putting a tower here, we need backhaul to this site. And in rural areas, this is what we're talking about today, it's expensive. And if we're putting a tower in there, that's usually one of our biggest expenses in a very rural area, is running that backhaul.
And that's the feedback we need to hear, because I had a flip phone way longer than I want to admit. And it still amazes me to this day that I can watch a video in rural Juniata County with no broadband. So it's been an amazing leap forward, but we need to know that doesn't necessarily mean the next huge leap is going to be 8 to 10 gigs.
Just look at what these companies are paying for those frequencies, the FCC, billions.
Right.
Billions and billions of dollars to buy a frequency. That frequency is the frequency that they use to broadcast that data out to our users. We'll divide that up just like we're doing the math when it comes to poles and holes, building fiber out. You still have to divide that up. And like I said, I could be wrong about this. It's the reason why companies like AT&T and Verizon and all the wireless providers, when you talk about this type of wireless, put data caps on, because you can't afford to turn somebody loose. The average American household of 4 uses 96 gigabytes of data per month. And you do that math, and you run that math up the tree when it comes to population sitting around a cell tower, it would kill them.
I'll give you a statistic. In the last 10 years, we've seen on our mobile data traffic on our network increase 250,000%. 250,000% in 10 years, mobile data. Much of which is
and
video.
that's with a lot of Wi-Fi data. A lot of your phone data that you're using is actually going through a LAN system, because whenever you're using Wi-Fi, it's going to a LAN system. It's going straight to some other backhaul mechanism. So that's been your phone system is quite a bit on what you get at your home, or your business at this point. And that may, I don't know to date figures, but it may have surpassed what the data from phones may be greater than the wireless data that's being passed right now.
Young lady from Farm Bureau, you've been very patient.
Thank you. My name is Laura Young. I'm here with the Center County Farm Bureau. Appreciate the invite. Thank you very much for having us here. I don't have any solutions, but I want to make sure an additional perspective is noted here. in this room, I've heard agriculture thrown around at least twice. So I want to make sure we do have a voice here. A colleague of mine from the Farm Bureau once said something that really resonated with me, which was that when we think of the term farmer, we're often, I mean, right now, I just said the word, you probably got a certain picture in your head. Maybe it's a guy in overalls in front of a tractor, maybe it's a field of corn, maybe it's a field of soybeans, maybe it's somebody with hay in their mouth, I don't know. But I think what farmers haven't been good at historically is representing really what they are. We're getting a little better at that. People like Kerry have shown up at a lot of our meetings to help us do that better. And what we really are one of everything. So we are HR managers, we're accountants, we're machinists, we're scientists, we're weathermen. We are farmers. We do all of the things. Separately and interestingly, and I don't. Did you say someone here was from the USDA?
Actually, they were invited. We have from the yes. I'm sorry. Yes, she's back.
Separately, and if you're following anything that's happening right now with agriculture, farmers currently represent less than 2% of our population. That number, to me, is equally terrifying and equally exciting. To me, it's terrifying because it's a lot of burden on people that already have a lot of jobs to do, to feed all of you. Everybody here at this table eats and drinks, so you rely on a farmer somewhere. It's exciting because I think that population has become about 2% because the fact that there are advancing technologies. So we've been able to produce more food with less people. But I think what's difficult about that also is that we're doing that in competition with huge, huge companies. And that is getting difficult. So we are now, as a Farm Bureau, looking at policies, talking about restrictions on how we can use the word meat. So did you ever think a farmer was going to have to argue about what meat is? Well, they're creating meat in labs now. And that's going to be in your food chain very soon. And so these are the kind of things that we're up against. I say all this as background because with all those hats that farmers keep getting added onto them, an additional one is online market manager, is website designer, is newsletter editor. There are a lot of new jobs coming on to farmers to stay abreast and to stay relevant in our current economy. And I guess I can start to step away from the Farm Bureau role and take it more personally. And with the business, I'm a business owner, I'm a part-time farmer, and some of the numbers that have been thrown around here are how many dollars it takes to get broadband to your house. I'll just give you a little perspective. We were quoted at $35,000 to move from our road to our house, which is about 400 feet. That's a lot of money. Second personal item there is that for me, when I'm going to do my accounting online, which many of us do, I click a button and I can go out and I can feed and water the goats and come back, and my speed of the internet is still waiting to pull that screen up on QuickBooks Online. We're all faced with this, and I think with a limited population that we are, it's getting harder and harder to compete. While all of your expectations, my own included, are that you can order meat online, and that you can order your vegetables online, and that food can show up at your door, and you can take care of all these things there. The avenues by which you do that are the hardest for us to access through money and availability because of where we live and because where we can do the jobs that we do. So, no solutions, just wanted to make sure that perspective was at the table. That I don't think that, again, farmers historically have been great at representing these parts for themselves. And we're getting better at it, but in the meantime, make sure that we're not left out of this conversation. It's not just about watching a video on your phone, it's about getting your product to market in many cases. So we also have people in our Farm Bureau, and Kerry, I know you're familiar with Bethany, and you visited her. You have a perspective here too. She's running, our president of the Farm Bureau is running a robotic milker that relies on internet access. If internet access goes down, those cows aren't getting milked the way that they're expecting to at this point. That shifts the whole thing. She was able to go to robotic, and that involved less labor for her, but if that breaks, now that's 2 people in your household that have to take care of this whole herd. You know, again, advancing technologies, but we're not keeping up in other areas, and it's getting really challenging for us.
Thank you very much. First of all, you are representing the farming community very, very well, but I was actually going to mention that, and interestingly, to the doc's point, that automatic milker is not just about efficiency in milking, but it's actually shown to improve the overall herd's health. It's able to monitor if there's a problem with the cow after it's being milked, or even prior, it'll send it into sick bay. It doesn't go out and rest the herd. So they've seen an overall better improvement of the herd's health, which I think you see the same thing in telemedicine, preventive medicine. Some of you know I have some interest there, but
I'm really interested
good stuff.
in Jason's perspective here because I said to you earlier, Kerry, that the farmers have often been the first to adopt technologies. And any of you have stepped in a tractor lately, you know why.
Right.
And I wonder, you know, we look at these methane digesters that are at the, you know, some of the big dairy farms and that sort of thing. Is there a way that farmers can be integral to the solution because we're so rural, we have land, maybe there are resources there that we're not looking at that could help, they could be central hubs to their unit, to
Better
their
yet, you guys
community.
have silos, and I would like to be on top of those silos.
There you go. So don't forget the farmers when you're thinking about these solutions because we've been ahead of a lot of other things and maybe there's an opportunity.
Targeted several farms.
Well, in previous hearing, we did talk about coupling utilization of poles and or silos or towers, and I think we're getting smarter about that. You're kind of mono-optic at first, but I'm a little bit optimistic. I think about the Transcontinental Railway. Somebody had an idea and somebody probably told them they were crazy. When they talked about being able to talk to somebody on the other side of the world, they probably thought they were crazy, but I believe we can get to this. Michael, I know you had a point, and a gentleman in the back had a comment. We'll go in that order.
Just to wrap up my thoughts, and they're very varied. The bottom line is that this is a moving target. We don't know, just like Dr. Stuck 20 years ago, we don't know what all the internet can be used for. But we do know that we need it, we want it. And we also know that it's going to have different needs next year, just as it did last year. I mean, our growth is, we're doubling every 18 months, and we have to continually evolve our network to do that. And again, just another side note, when we had a really good customer in New Bloomfield, he loved our service, he built a new house on the side of the ridge. He had 4 poles up his lane. We had to spend $1,200 just to get the survey done for those poles before we could do anything about, we know what cable costs, it's like 60 cents a foot, it's not bad. The challenge was that it took us about 4 or 5 months until we got the results back, and by then, I mean, he couldn't wait that long. Anyway, these are just some little barriers that,
No, but those
from my
are good
perspective,
things that
that
as
are
government
holding
officials, I
us
think
back
we
to.
can help with. That regulatory burden, that time period, that mandating a pole inspection of $300.
Yes, Tuscarora Mountains, you know where that is.
Yeah. So did you lose him to another competitor?
Yeah, he went with Dish, and he's trying to use DSL.
Very good.
I'm not sure. He may be using wireless.
That's good stuff to hear. Gentleman back, Doc, I think you either.
I just wanted to mention that the gentleman to your right that said about using the cell phone to watch a video. And we got to remember that you mentioned about the cost. You know, that a farmer, their budget is not going to afford to, because if you watch one video, is approximately what, 4 or 5 gigabyte? You watch one video at 1080 would be about 4 or 5 gigabyte. What's that going to cost you? How many gigabytes? I mean, how many movies could you watch on that cell phone? The average person, like myself, is retired here, we're not going to be able to afford that. I can't afford that, to pay for that price. And then I know with the backhaul that these folks have to pay, it costs them a lot. So I don't think using strictly the wireless, the 4G, 5G, is going to be the answer for all of us. We can't afford it.
Thank you.
Over here. Just on a practical basis, the example with the telephony, with the wireless phone, I bought the unlimited as my solution through Verizon, and it's wonderful for the first 15 gigabytes or the first 2 days of the month, and then the rest of the time, if they throttle it down to no faster than 600 kilobytes, which is less than a megabyte. All right, so it's a deceitful advertising to start with, where you have unlimited. Unlimited is what it's actually called, and it's a fire hose followed by a drip for the rest of the month. But on a very practical basis, my request would be, I'm thrilled to be sitting here amongst the leadership of Huntingdon County and representing J.C. Blair Hospital, and having a neighbor like Jason just down the road saying, Rob, you got a problem? Your problem is taking care of my patients. You got a chimney. I need a tower for Huntington because you got the population center. And I'm looking at what the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare did on a federal basis. They said, it's all screwed up. The laws are all screwed up, like the other gentleman said. It's based on old technology. And they said, let's do an innovations program. And launch an innovations program and said, apply for an innovations exception for a demonstration project. So CMMI did that. Dr. Lauren Hughes at our Department of Health here in the state is working with $30 million on a CMMI demonstration project for alternative healthcare funding. Could the governor's office, with guidance from and support from the legislature, say, we're going to do 10 demonstration projects, break any law you want with our permission in advance, and see if you can solve it, and then let's find out, as the gentleman said, does it work or does it not? Is Jason and this little hospital in the middle of Nowheresville going to improve industry, reduce healthcare costs, get better PSSA scores, all things we can track? Let's do a study. So I'm challenging you, and I'm saying we're ready to sit down tomorrow and say, we'll be your first demonstration project at $1 on up to multiples of that. Our community's right behind that, and we're glad to extend that demonstration to include a group like Eisinger and this county as well. We have the Kinber line running right through both areas that you guys paid about $100 million for, meaning the state taxpayers paid, about, 8-10 years ago. It has empty transmission lines that could be utilized, and where they could be our backhaul provider. So I'm requesting an innovations program funded for small-time demonstration projects, and a little bit of that funds for independent parties to study the outcomes. Does it work or does it not? Is it better to invest in 100 of those 10 years, 3 years from now, or one Comcast, one Verizon, or one AT&T? It might be the better investment there.
Very innovative. I like that a lot. Reminds me a little about the truck that got stuck under a bridge one time. You have a bunch of engineers trying to figure out what's going wrong. Hours and hours later, the EMS and police, and finally a little boy comes by and says, why don't you lower some of the air out of tires? Now, whether it's a true story or not, it does remind us that sometimes we need to think outside the box. Mr. Klugley.
Yeah, I'm Mark Lucy, the Huntingdon County Planning Director, and Mr. Reitman had indicated that we had unique opportunities to do a 6-county comprehensive plan update, which identified what are the key priorities in our major regional area of our county, which truly is affected by this rural broadband issue. I don't think we're sitting here before you to talk about urban broadband. It's really a rural broadband issue. And the beautiful thing about looking at it from a planning perspective is you get to look at issues from all aspects. One thing we found, and I think it's important, that this issue hasn't even come up, is understanding where we're at in this environment. In the last 15 years, we've seen that Huntingdon County is shrinking in our workforce population. In Huntingdon County alone, over the last 15 years, our workforce population has shrunk by 12% between the ages of 25 and 54. This issue truly affects that because, if you have continued people that are of that age frame, which ultimately consist of the economic development engine of our economy, the workforce class, if we can't provide them basic things that they're looking for, and that's one thing that the comprehensive plan acknowledged, what are the key priorities? Amazingly, in every single one of our 6 counties, broadband was the #1 issue that came up across the board. And we're finding that as our population is aging, our rural area is aging much faster than the Commonwealth in general, but the Commonwealth is aging faster than the United States. And that's something we need to continue to look at. How are we going to incentivize allowing not only our youth to stay in this Commonwealth, but have people come to our Commonwealth? So this is a major issue to think about that. And one thing I want to point out is I really appreciate this opportunity. I thank everybody for coming out to this because this is a truly important issue, not only to Huntingdon County, to the Southern Alleghenies region, but obviously to all of rural Pennsylvania. And I would just encourage you gentlemen to continue to do things like this, because one thing we found with, we have Mr. Weaver and Mr. Gillio, and we have other different people talking about way different ways on how you can deploy broadband. And you have a regulatory environment where you're talking about copper and fiber and wireless. It's an issue that is truly complicated. So what I would want to point out is one thing we found is one issue or one solution is not going to solve this problem. So continuing to do these kinds of things, in urban areas, would a fiber backbone be the most wise thing to do? Potentially. Would having, using our telephone and our cable companies or wireless companies make sense for more of our intermediate population areas? Would doing something what Mr. Weaver wants to do with wireless make sense in more rural areas? Absolutely. So what I would encourage you to do is not rush into any kind of a solution or incentive package that only favors one group over another. And one thing I think that I noticed when I heard all these gentlemen speaking to, they used the word customer. And what I want to point out is broadband an issue about customers, or is it about citizens? Is it about people? And I would say that it's about people. We're talking about education, healthcare, economic development. We're talking about a lot of things that affect our community. And if we want to continue to make our Commonwealth prosper into the years, into the future, we can't continue to look at this issue as affecting customers. If you want to look at it that way, here's a key statistic for you. Across the board, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, and 3 are 6 counties with different providers that provide have multiple providers providing over 100 megabits per second in our community, compared to over 22% across America. We're much less of a competitive opportunity. If we want to look at it truly from a customer standpoint, we're not even getting that job done. So I just want to look at the bigger picture and continue to encourage you gentlemen to do this kind of a thing where we can truly bring the experts to figure out how we can solve this, because one glove is not going to fit all scenarios. So thank you for the opportunity.
I'd like to jump in a little bit. Third priority in the 6-county plan was cooperation and collaboration. In the rural sense, if you're talking about scrambling the way Jason's done and Nittany Media's done, and I think Nittany Media made a good case for it, you can have a bureaucratic solution for a tiny municipality or very small agricultural firms. It's got to be easy. It's got to be a solution that's enabled, so we don't have to fill out this much paperwork each. And that kind of thing, and this is across the board. It's not just broadband, but when you need solutions, and the three of us work together very often, the commissioners as well, and we need to file a big grant. That brings us to our knees for a couple of weeks. So the solutions have to be in a rural flavor. And I think that's a big divide between large companies and small companies, and it affects the greatest landmass. The greatest landmass can't assemble the people to solve their own problems in a very large sense.
If I could follow up with Jason, I'm trying to wrap my head around the physical assets that you would need. So let's say in a perfect world, you had $1 million check tomorrow. What would you buy? How many people could you connect? Or is that just such a small amount that doesn't really get you off? I'm just trying to figure out what you need to, I think of lines, obviously, but I don't think of what they connect to or what you need to buy.
To give you an example of how this works, right now we have a mountaintop that we're working on. Lee Bond actually owns the mountaintop, Bond Furniture. So we're going to an agreement with him that's a profit sharing agreement. So I'm not going to be penalized up front and priced out of the business. As the co-op makes money, then he'll get paid for his land use. So we put a tower up there. We have budgeted $50,000, okay, and that $50,000 will put approximately 60 locals, okay, $50,000 for 60 locals. Now, granted, that doesn't seem like a lot of bang for your buck, but that gets us our tower. There's no power plant on top of that mountain, so we have to put solar, wind, batteries, and a generator up there. That's $20,000 of our budget right there. Okay, so the initial $50,000 gets us our capacity, our over capacity. we'll easily handle those 60 customers in the valley. But then we also have Lewistown Fort, who has contacted us. They would like us to microwave our service to them. We have a couple farmers over there who have partnered up with us to put remote towers in their locations to broadcast to them. We have people in Cassville who have donated the top of their mountain for us to put a small tower up to broadcast down through Cassville, Calvin, Cherry Grove. We have a gentleman in Reedsville. So this $50,000, it sounds like you're only servicing 60 customers with $50,000. That's a big chunk. That's our hub. That gets us our hub, our power, and the ability to service 5, 6 other communities right off the top of that tower.
So anyone watching at home, if you want to write Jason a $50,000 check, it sounds like you can do a lot with it to get started.
You know, it's unbelievable. I'll say this. This effort is unbelievable in that I've had people come out of the woodwork. It is just falling in our lap. We have, just 2 days ago, I had a gentleman say, hey, I have a generator in my garage. Would you want that? Well, we have on our budget, we have $3,000 in our budget for a backup generator. That's the fail-safe. That's if all else fails and we don't have any wind and we don't have any sun and our batteries have crapped out, the generator's going to kick on. Just dropped it and gave it to us just like that. We have another gentleman who contacted us and gave us 3 towers the day before that. Has 3 towers on his property. He doesn't want anymore and says, hey, would you guys like these towers? Well, absolutely. I mean, I have a list of investors, people who have come to us and said, hey, we love this and we want to be a part of this. We want to give you money. And you know, we haven't taken that money yet. Obviously, we just put them on the list because we're not legally, you know, we don't have our legal entity paperwork yet. We don't have our nonprofit status paperwork yet. But you know, it's just been the response to this has just been, I can tell you, very overwhelming. We have a website that individuals can go to. Well, right now the best place to go to is just Mill Creek Broadband Cooperative on Facebook, and there's a normal send message button. Actually links directly through our in-house system that'll message myself, Ken, or 2 other folks, individuals that have kind of taken the lead on fielding people's questions. We have a system in place where when customers contact us, we have a system in place where we do a desk survey, where we look at it from the desk using tools like Google Earth and that kind of stuff, look at propagation and that kind of, and, you know, all the technical stuff. But the point is when I have one individual contact me and they're in a pocket, this just happened out on Route 26. One individual called me in a pocket of 26 residential homes in an area that is going to be a nightmare for anybody to service. But guess what? I can see them, the highest house on their mountain, I can see from the one donor location in Lewistown Fort. So what I'll do is I will beam the signal to that house. That house will become a donor house, and I'll put a piece of equipment on that house that will just distribute to all 26 people. And I could probably do it all equipment in probably a couple $1,000s for 26 people. So it's all individual solutions. I mean, we're going to have some big, you know, broad strokes, but
you put another 50,000, you got the hospital, which you can see from his mountaintop to the top of my chimney. The 10 grand or so for a to beam it, the signal, bypassing the wires, then we can blast it out over to the streets. That can be seen from whoever can see the chimney at J.C. Blair Hospital. You're lighting up half of downtown Huntington, and you can deliver it either for free or for fee. He's got the technology to make that happen. So that 50, it's not, $1 million would go a long way to have a multi-year, multi-community project going. This is not a $10, $20 million thing.
And the VA published in one of their publications, if anybody from the VA here, if I misquote this, they saved 20%, in 1 year they saved 20% of their operating expenses by doing telemedicine. If I offer free service to their vets, they sure as heck can pay me to do that. Their vets might not have to pay a dime, but they can reimburse me some of that 20%. They've saved, you know, a lot. They've saved a lot of money. And now individual hospitals, the same thing. You know, they're going to save administrative fees. Well, I'm saying I'll give it to you, but you know, we need to. I'm not going to buy the customer's equipment. You know, you'll buy your customer's equipment, and you'll pay me a small fee for connection.
You'll be all right until you take government money and they start to regulate how you.
Well, we've actually come up with a philosophy. Our philosophy with this is we don't make any plans off government money. We will accept government money, but the government money does not constitute our operating budget. It does not. does not put us in a place where we're, if we lose that money, then we're out of business. So, well, winds change. I mean, things change. I've been in the business a long time. Things
Real quick,
change.
I know there's a couple other questions. You keep throwing the word microwave around, just for our listeners that may not be here in the room. I think if you could say, spell that out a little bit so nobody thinks we're shooting hot pockets around or
All
whatever.
right. So microwave, there's probably people who are way more qualified to talk about microwave than me, but microwave is just a higher, usually there are licensed and unlicensed frequencies. It's a higher frequency, it's a wireless frequency. You can get it in licensed and unlicensed. We will be getting it. So it's basically, it is a microwave. It is no different than a microwave. Frequencies are different, but basically you shoot a high density signal out, and the data rides on that signal. And because of the wavelengths and because of the propagation rates of the microwave, you can put a lot of data on it. So the data link we're going to get is capable of 1 gig. That's a synchronous 1 gig connection. That means from the tower on top of Jack's Mountain to the tower on top of Stone Mountain, which isn't relatively that far, we can get a synchronous 1 gig connection back and forth between a tower. Way more than what we need. And since we're talking about this, and I apologize for getting off the microwave thing, if somebody else, if you're more keen on that, I know you can jump in. Education. Did Mark leave? Well,
He said, yeah, he's a resident.
okay, catch him up on this. To me, this is key. There's a lot of people in this room who can probably back me up on this. Broadband education is something that is needed. Can you imagine if you were an organization who was paying a company to deliver water, and they were paid to deliver the water, and they were selling it to the people they were delivering it to, and the tap was just wide open all the time. It was just wide open, and they were, and that's the closest analogy I can come up with what's happening with our data on the back end. People need to be educated what costs them data. We need to regulate. I think we need to regulate the apps that are so data hungry, that are using data in the background. You don't see it. It's not in front of you. Your phone's sitting here and you have no idea what's consuming data. I have a 20 meg connection at home, and as you can guess, I'm a pretty heavy internet user, and so is my son. We're fine with it. You want to know why we're fine with it? Is because we are very careful at what we let have access to our machines. We're very careful to what we let have access out of our network. So my analogy is you've got the spigot running, and we're paying for all this, and we're looking at ways. We're looking at this initiative in ways that we can jack the broadband up to 100 meg. Nobody in this room, I task you, anybody in this room to tell me you need 100 meg. I real seriously, that is a lot of data. That is a lot of data. We need to start looking at bringing those two together. Maybe we do have people who need more, we know we do. We have lots of rural people who need more bandwidth, but we also have a lot of waste going on out there. That tap is wide open. Apps are eating it up. People are using illegal software that's using it up. What do they call them? BitTorrents. If you guys are all familiar with BitTorrents, where people don't know what they do. And I won't go into what they do here, but take that word away from here. To me, it's all about education. It's putting, and that's one of the foundations of a cooperative. It's one of the things I love about the cooperative. One of the foundations of a cooperative is education, and we will work very hard at educating every one of our members on that kind of thing, because it's going to affect the cost. Being a cooperative, what you put out is what you put in. It's going to affect your costs. So,
thank you.
Sorry.
Appreciate that. No,
This is for days.
I'll never look at my microwave the same. Lisa, then Laura.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, representatives, for being here today and focusing on this issue. As we continue to look at solutions, Mifflin and Juniata County have benefited recently with USDA grants. They had opioid initiative, and we were able to apply for a body scanner for the correctional facility and a mobile drone take-back unit for Juniata County. However, they also have Community Connect grants, and with the USDA representative here, could we hear a little bit more about those?
Batter up.
Sorry, Sue.
I think I've been called. Hi, I'm Sue Gantz from USDA Rural Development. And yes, I am here to represent agriculture and farmers, because precision agriculture, and our Secretary of Agriculture is all about do right and feed everyone. Okay? But we have a lot of different programs through USDA Rural Development, and thank you for introducing as far as our community facilities program for what you were able to benefit from. And we have the Community Connect program, which is for small rural communities to not only construct broadband service, but also to set up a community center and provide service for all the residents of the community, but provide free service to all those that are in public health care and first responders and things like that. Along with the Community Connect program, we have what we call the Distance Learning and Telemedicine program, where we can provide funds to purchase equipment not only for distance learning, but also telemedicine. The main issue here today is the broadband, where we need to connect. E-connectivity is one of the priorities of our agency. We do have a broadband loan program, but I think everyone's waiting to not apply for the broadband loan program because we do have also a pilot program on the horizon, which will provide quite a bit of funds, not only loan funds, but grant funds. Those application guidelines are in the works. We thank Congress for providing the budget authority. Now we're just trying to urge Washington to put the application guidelines out so we can bring it to rural Pennsylvania and help connect in rural Pennsylvania.
Well, we'll be knocking on your door some more, so we appreciate that. Laura, again, you've been very patient. Do you want to add something to that?
Jason something said an additional thought, which was everything that Jason said made the most sense to me about of everybody in this room, because he can tie it to a dollar, to a moment, to a place, to a silo, whatever it is. And it occurred to me as we were talking that as legislators, perhaps that's also something you should be considering, that people like Jason continue to have the freedom to do that sort of work that might help fill in these gaps. And maybe that was already said, or maybe that's already well known, but it's, when we talk about regulations and we talk about changes and stuff, it tends to go big, and sounds like small is working in this case. And maybe we should also make sure we have and continue to have room to support that too.
I agree with you, Laura, and I will be following up the governor's office, because what I don't want is government to then come in and impede their progress. I think there's some great examples of American initiative here, where the people are taking control of the situation and going to make a change. And I think that's what we've always prided ourselves as a country. I see some great smiles going around the room as people are hearing some other things, and we will convey that to the governor's office. Other things before we wrap up. Young man.
So I'm just sort of soaking up a lot of this just because a lot of this is very new to me. But the one thing I guess sort of concerns me is, as this continues and grows, my concern is with the labor shortage. Because with the at the academy, and we talked to a lot of people in the industry, and we've talked to some national companies about upgrading 5G towers and just the demand that they have for employees. And I guess I'm just sort of speaking to everybody in the industry, whether it be co-op or the for-profit businesses. Definitely reach out to the educational institutions, because we want to be able to be there, to be prepared to have the graduates in place to fill those needs, because then it's also going to help provide jobs for that workforce that wants to leave. So if we can promote these as positive opportunities for employment locally, it's going to help retain that talent, and it's going to provide the workforce to put the fiber, the towers, whatever it might be in.
Well, I see this as a great educational tool. If I was running a high school class, I would be using these as case studies, and who knows, depending on how this goes, maybe we'll get your schools to get some students involved. Michael, and then Ron.
To address Mike, we've doubled our installer force, and it takes about 6 months to get the people up to speed. So I would definitely appreciate some help in getting that kind of training in place. And again, the sort of conclusion here, let's not forget about opportunity cost. I think everybody in this room has the same goals, the same ideas. We want ubiquitous broadband, we want it fast, we want it everywhere, and we especially want it to be affordable. But what happens if we don't? I mean, we are. I mean, it is going. Is it going fast enough? I see frustration all over the place. I'm working as fast as I can. My guys are well, like we said, we've hired new people and we've got them in production, but there's a little bit of inertia there. But again, if the opportunity cost, if we don't do this, if we have the brain drain, if we don't have the industry coming in, there's a price tag there that we can't imagine. But thank you for doing this.
Well, we'll be in touch with our vocational schools. You know, Penn State didn't take long till they jumped to the plate whenever the gas industry came in to Pennsylvania, and they developed a course. They acquired Penn Tech University, so I think our educational institutions will respond to that. Ron?
I guess I would just ask you as representatives of the government to not underestimate the savings that you can achieve by looking at your healthcare costs that you provide across the state by matching up claim data to where rural broadband does not exist and looking at even the diagnosis of patients, as our good doctor has pointed out, savings that can be had when people have technology available in their homes. So I would encourage you to take a look at your own data sources to try to come up with what that savings would look like.
Anything else to go to the order? Yes, Mr. Dunkel.
I'd just like to say a couple things. Number one, I want to thank you very, very much for hosting this today. And I think if there was one consensus here, it is that one size does not fit all. One size did not fit all. Very big difference between rural and urban. Very big difference in terms of how we approach this, whether we go through a co-op or whether we go through existing small providers or whatever. And I guess what I really want to say is this, that we've heard so many great ideas here today, and I really was intrigued by the pilot project and some of these ideas and things that have come forth from the co-op here. What I would encourage you as members of the legislature to do and the governor to do is let's find a little bit of money. Let's make that money available so that we can move forward with some actual steps and just not be talking about the same thing in another year or 2 years out. So I know you just passed the budget for this coming year for the state, but let's find some money. Let's go the unconventional route. Let's create some pilot programs or do something that would not appear under normal circumstances to be normal, but let's just make something happen. Enough said.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Just one note. I'm from Century Lake, and I'll make it 1 minute. I agree with what you're saying. Pardon?
That's good because we have two.
I know. Justin, we have a lot of exchanges. We have 17 exchanges in your service area.
Correct.
We have provided the 1.544, which was enough 14 years ago. But at this point in time, we're still obligated to provide voice service. We've let 1/3 of the customers, and this is normal with all the local small companies, rural companies. We've let 1/3 of the customers, and there's a big difference between providing 1.5 and going to 10 or 20 or whatever may. We did take all the Connect America Fund 2 money. We have actually enabled over 10,000 living units in your service areas in the last 3 years to go to 10.1. And we still have a few more to go. We are at 27,000 in the state. We have to get to 30,000 to meet our obligation. But I don't think you're going to find, and this is what I think what's heard, everybody agrees we need more bandwidth. And I think what come out here, a lot of people have said, is one company can't do it all. We really believe it's going to take a concerted effort of a lot of companies, a lot of different technologies. We don't have wireless, we don't have a TV or anything like that. We have a network, and we see some areas that we probably will never get 10 meg to. Someone else is going to have to get there. And there are several new technologies in the future that I think in the next couple of years probably will be able to do that. So I'll take it questions afterwards. Tony wants to talk a little bit, but just wanted to put that out there.
Very good. Thank you. Great recap. With that in mind, please do not let this be the end of this dialogue. Let it be the catalyst from the beginning. I want you to be exchanging information with each other as well as us. We will continue this dialogue. My staff and I will dissect this video extensively and share it with our colleagues and make it available. So without further note, being not in Harrisburg, we're going to stop on time. And I thank you very much. Thank you, Mifflin County, for being gracious to us.